This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
The Pacers fall 130-119 to the Toronto Raptors in a brutal game. A lot of guys out on both sides here, but a lot of this comes down to, once again, the Pacers not playing with effort consistently for 48 minutes. Facci, I don't know where you want to start with this game because, you look at the score, it doesn't look terrible compared to how it felt while you were watching it, but where do you want to start?
I just think this team came out flat. Like, I don't want to make the excuses because, yeah, Indiana was out six guys. So was Toronto. Toronto was without six players, one of them being Scotty Barnes, their best player. And this is a Toronto's team that was just downright awful coming into this game with two wins. I think if this was the first basketball game you had watched all year, it might have actually been believable that this is a good Toronto team the way that they got everything they wanted, especially in the paint. Indiana had no answer.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to make excuses here because of injuries because both teams had them, but like the Pacers started Enrique Freeman, a 6'7" rookie at center to guard Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl absolutely torched Indiana down low, and it wasn't just all on Enrique Freeman because Enrique Freeman only played Facci 19 minutes. Jakob Poeltl played 38 minutes, so there was other guys guarding him, but 30 points, 16 rebounds, 13 of 18 from the field. Like he dominated. He was really good against Boston the other night. He's been playing a lot better. I think that even if Turner had been out there, he probably would have had a good game just because he's a good player, but it just made it easier for them to live in the paint. And RJ Barrett was unreal, had a season high 39 points. No, I think a lot of it starts with the perimeter defense, right? Not good perimeter defense in this game, and then of course zero interior defense with who the Pacers had out there. So I think that played a big factor into it. But I want to just kind of criticize Carlisle here for the beginning of the game because I thought Jarris Walker would probably start for Ben Shepherd, but I was a little bit surprised to see Enrique Freeman get the start. I understand the Pacers probably wanted to have more of a balanced attack
Yeah.
where you have Obi and McConnell playing their normal role, but I think in this game right here, with the way Jakob Poeltl is built, I just don't think that's a good matchup for Enrique Freeman whatsoever. And quite frankly, even if he is your backup big, he probably should have played about 10 minutes, not 19. I feel like he played way too long out there, and I'm not knocking the guy, right? But it's just he's just not ready for this moment. And I just felt like Obi Toppin played 31 minutes. You might as well just start him and play him with Tyrese, a guy that he's had chemistry with in the past, instead of not playing him together with Tyrese as much. I just felt like that was a bad decision.
I'm right there with you. Look, Enrique Freeman just looked overmatched, just completely overmatched at times. It looked like he was just happy to be out there, and that's like if I told you that Enrique Freeman was going to be logging a start in November, I think a little drip of sweat would come down your forehead because you'd be thinking Indiana's got to be in a bad position if that's the case. I think Obi Toppin would have been a much better start. He did play well in this game. I think he had a run in like the beginning of the fourth where he was really putting the team on his back. I think he would have been rolling with the best five that you probably had. Obviously, you still want McConnell coming off the bench for sure. But I think, yeah, Obi Toppin being the starting center probably would have been something to be a little bit better matchup wise for the Pacers. You talked about Jakob Poeltl. I mean, this is now, they mentioned coming into this game, Chris Denari was saying that he played the best two games consecutively in his career. Well, make it the best three games. He's on a tear right now, and the Pacers had absolutely no answer. I got a text from one of my friends saying, just, "Who the hell is Enrique Freeman?" And I told you offline, it was like a guy that you're probably not going to see getting another start. To be honest, I feel like this is a hey, you know what? We did it. It happened. I don't want to see it again. That's how I'd put it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this is a good point to bring up right now because the Pacers did make a signing today, Facci.
Did
Shams Charania reported that the Pacers are signing Moses Brown, a guy that I don't know if we mentioned him or not. I think he might have been someone we did talk about a little bit later. Somebody might have brought him up, but 25-year-old, 7'2" guy. He's been in the league for 5 seasons now. I think he's played on 6 different teams. He's been a journeyman, was in the G League, averaging like 19 and 14. I think he was in with Boston's G League team, if I'm not mistaken. But not really. I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't watched a lot of him, but I know that he's been around the league, and that was a name that was floating around there as a potential player the Pacers could sign. He's 7'2", right? Which you love that about a 7'4" wingspan. And to me, the Pacers front office waited too long to make this signing, in my personal opinion. You get yourself in a situation where you lose both your backup centers and you wait like 2 or 3 weeks and just kind of ride it out. The deal is non-guaranteed. He's getting paid per day that he's with the team. So it's not like you have to worry about, oh my gosh, if we want to make a move, we have to, lose this money on the salary. No, it's not guaranteed. You can cut them right away, and there's no ramifications for it. So, to me personally, this deal should have probably been done a week or so ago, because you get in the situation like you were tonight, where Miles Turner can't go because he has a calf injury, and now you actually have at least one center out there, a true center that can play in the game. Instead, you put yourself in a bind by not having somebody out there that can defend, and I think that it just kind of set the tone early on. I don't know how you feel about that, but we're not usually too critical of this front office. They've made a lot of good moves, but I feel like they were too slow to react to getting a big on the roster.
No, you're 100% right. They definitely could have used him in this game, like flat out. I mean, I don't know if obviously Turner gets hurt yesterday, and against Miami, and they probably didn't know. All right, what are we gonna do then? But like, you could have used Moses Brown against Orlando, about a week ago. That type of size would have helped, very much in a game that ended up being a 4-point loss. So I think the idea of Moses Brown has always been better than what his actual play is, but let's not knock the guy. When he had an opportunity with OKC, this is a couple years ago. I'm not going back on like what JaVale McGee was like 10 to 15 years ago, but a couple years ago, Moses Brown did have some really big games. Just to read off a couple stat lines, 24 points, 18 boards, 7 blocks against the Clippers. I mean, there was a ton of double doubles in there. He had some success against the Pacers, 12 points, 11 boards. There was another time he played Indiana where he had 16 points, 7 boards. Like, there's been 2020 games that he's had before. Like, this guy's got a lot of size, has the potential. I don't think we're going to be, he was playing 30 minutes back then for OKC. If he could be playing 10 minutes a night, I think he could be able to give Indiana a boost. He gives them much needed size. This is someone that for his career averaged about 5 points, 5 boards. That's pretty solid. The fact that he's 25 years old still gives him some room to be able to grow, rather than someone that, like, you don't know if they're going to be able to make a couple appearances and then just kind of be, washed up. I think that this is a good, very low risk, like you mentioned, non-guaranteed signing, to the point where I'm right there with you. This should have happened 1 to 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. Like, even if the Pacers would have preferred to play Obi Toppin as the backup 5 when they
Sure.
had him healthy with Turner, you still have him on the roster for insurance. To me, and then you get him integrated with the team, a little bit of familiarity with the roster, right? With the scheme and things like that, and how they want to play. It's like, you're not going to ask him to do a lot. You're going to go out there and say, "Hey, protect the paint, get rebounds, score down low." You're not going to ask him to shoot a lot. He's not going to be that kind of player. It's just, to me, it was just way too late of a reaction. It was being more reactive than proactive. And I think when they saw Turner was out tonight, they're like, "Oh, we got to make a move now." And it's like, it shouldn't have came to that point, because there was even a time against the Knicks when Obi Toppin was out, right? So now your backup 5 was Enrique Freeman again, which they matched his minutes with Jericho Sims. But even then, it was not like what you want. Like, I know you drafted Enrique Freeman, but he's 6'7". He's not a center. He's a power forward. And the reason you have him is to allow him to develop in the G League, because of his story and how he just kind of worked his butt off in Akron. I mean, I like the kid. I think he's a lot of fun and the story's great, but like, he's not ready for NBA basketball. But aside from all that, a lot of fans very upset with the way that Tyrese Haliburton played in tonight's game. Rightfully so. Did not shoot the ball particularly well. It's been Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde all season long with him. Very inconsistent play from him. And, I'm not sure exactly where to start when it comes to criticizing him, but this is why you are the franchise guy. I mean, you have to step up and you have to put teams on your back when you are down without players, and you have to be better than you were in this game. But I will say this, the big difference for me with him compared to other players, like, you can't say, "Oh, he's got it. Well, LeBron can do it with anybody. Tyrese should be able to do it." They're not the same player, right? Like, they're totally different players. Tyrese is, everybody gets paid in the NBA. If you're a franchise player for any team, you're going to have a franchise level money, and he's got to be better. I'm not saying that, but I do think that, uh, he's going through something clearly. And I feel like he does not look like the same guy, especially on second night of back-to-backs. So I'm not making excuses for injuries or anything like that, but he doesn't look like he has the same energy. Like, you could just tell in Miami last night, looked like a totally different guy Sunday night than what he looked like Monday against Toronto.
I just don't know what to say anymore. I mean, this is just not the guy that we saw last year. Like, if you took out that 35 point, 14 assist game against the Knicks, I would be like, man, I don't remember the last time that Tyrese looked himself. He had another good game against Dallas, earlier in the month, 25 points, 12 assists, but for the most part, it's just been really, really inconsistent play. Against Miami on Sunday, my birthday, he came through in a win, but he didn't come through from a shooting standpoint. 16 points, 13 assists, zero turnovers. The assist to turnover ratio is really what was able to get the pass on a poor shooting night of 4 from 13, 4 of 13. Tonight, 5 of 18. So you're talking about, I mean, it's getting tough. You're talking about he was 9 of 31 in his last 2 games from the field. Nine
Yeah.
of 31
Not
for a
shooting well.
franchise player. That just doesn't really happen. It really doesn't. If you want to go from a single digit perspective, he's had a 0 point game. He's had a 6 point game on 2 of 11 shooting. He's had a 9 point game on 3 of 14 shooting. I can't say Davion Mitchell or, a tough matchup or, back to back. It's like franchise players, they beat the matchups, they beat the circumstances, whatever it is. I mean, just 4 assists in this game. You can say, hey, look, Indiana's without a bunch of guys that obviously can help make shots, but 4 assists, if you're not scoring, you got to impact the game in different ways. And I felt like it was just a very different performance from a distribution standpoint, and just I feel like Tyrese just kind of disappeared in that second half. That fourth quarter, it felt like when Indiana was going on a run with Obi Toppin and Bennett Mathurin, that's when you needed Tyrese Haliburton.
And I will say this too, it's kind of weird when you look at the box score and you feel like Tyrese had a better defensive game than he did offensively. Like the fact that he had 5 steals and 2 blocks, like he did some nice things defensively. Like we've talked about this before, like he's improved in that area. But offensively, like this team had no flow to it whatsoever. Like they were going through the motions with that starting 5. Like Mathurin has a great box score, had a great fourth quarter, really came to life, had a good second quarter too, but like first and third quarter, that was those minutes he played with the starters. And that starting 5 just had no chemistry whatsoever. It was kind of like trying to figure out how they wanted to run the offense, who to get involved. And especially there in the third quarter, I felt like it was like, let's let Pascal just shoot every time. Pascal got 20 attempts in this game, and he had a couple baskets, so they're like, let's just keep feeding Pascal, which is what we asked of. But the offense literally just sat there and watched him. They weren't moving at all. It didn't feel like Pacers basketball to me. So I think that plays a part of it, just because he wasn't getting any offensive rhythm. And that's partially on him because he's the point guard. He's the one setting the table. So he's got to be the one that initiates a little bit more. But like Mathurin probably had most of his points in the fourth quarter as he was,
28.
he was going back and forth with RJ Barrett. It was almost like he was taking that matchup personally because, they're both from Canada. They're taking that matchup personal, both on Team Canada too. So it's like, I respect it. I liked it. I wish he would have had more of that throughout the whole entirety of the game because it was just fun to watch him just make every basket he shot, it felt like, there in the fourth quarter. But, you go back to Haliburton, like you talked about, it's just like there's been too many duds throughout the season so far. And I don't like coming on here particularly and talking about every bad game that he has, but he does have to be better. And that's the bottom line. I mean, I could sit here and criticize every little thing that he does bad, right? Because clearly he's going through something, whether it's mental or not. And every time you feel like he's going to have a breakthrough, right? You're hoping, okay, he had a good game against the Heat, didn't necessarily shoot the ball well, like you said, but still the 13 assists, the 0 turnovers, you're like, okay, can he build off this? And then in this game, 4 assists, 1 turnover. That's not Tyrese Haliburton basketball. So that's not Pacers basketball. And we've noticed this trend throughout the season. When he doesn't play well, this team plays like they did tonight. And I was glad to see McConnell came in, Quentin Jackson came in and played well together. But the fact that TJ McConnell and Quentin Jackson, the other 2 point guards that played in this game, had positive plus minuses and Haliburton's a minus 15, that just tells you how much more effort they were playing with that he wasn't playing with. They had a lot more energy, and I felt like they impacted the game in a much better way than he did throughout the entirety of the night.
Look, I knew McConnell, like you could feel it. He was playing with a lot of energy. He was playing good, but like looking at the actual box score and seeing it was plus 23.
Yeah.
And this game is like, whoa.
And again, they lost by 11.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like that is impact right there. So TJ McConnell, he's still got a 10 points, 7 assists, 5 steals. I mean, just great stuff by McConnell. Quentin Jackson, honestly, like nothing's ever going to blow you away, but yeah, no, he has played with some really good energy, some really good effort, and I feel like for a guy on a two-way contract, he's played well. Where like you look at a guy like Enrique Freeman, it was nice to see him hit a three early on in the game, but after that, I mean, there was no moments that had you saying like, "Hey, look, I think I saw something out of Freeman tonight." Like Jarris Walker on the other side, whatever, right next to him, getting his first career start as well. He go 6 points in the first quarter. That was it. He didn't score again. And I feel like this was kind of where Indiana needed a guy like Jarris Walker to be able to step up. There's more shots to be able to go around. Only takes 7 shots. 4 of them came in the first quarter. When he hit those 2 threes, I just felt like this was an opportunity for Jarris to step up, and he did not. And I think that this is just one of those losses where you look at this and you're like, Indiana only committed 10 turnovers. Hey, that's good. Well, what did they force? Well, they forced 23 turnovers. And you're telling me it didn't make a difference? There was
Yeah.
a point in the third quarter where Indiana forced 10 turnovers and Toronto shot 65% from the field in the quarter. That to me is crazy. That means if Toronto just put up a shot, it was going in. But Indiana, the fact, when do you strip the ball 10 times in a quarter? And Indiana trailed throughout the whole quarter. So that lead had like ballooned at one point to 22 points. So I just feel like very very disappointing game for the Pacers to be able to drop this one, because every time you think that they're about to go on at least a 2-game winning streak, something, string some sort of consistency together, they come out flat.
Yeah, I mean, what was interesting too to me was like this team cut it to 7 points with like 6 minutes left to go in the fourth. So they gave themselves a chance. They were exerting so much energy because they dug themselves such a bad hole, right? And if they had just played with, it's 82 games. You're not going to play great every night. You're not going to shoot the ball well every night. But still, I think that too often throughout, what is it, 13 games now this season, 14 games,
14.
6 and 8. They've had too many ups and downs. That's why, I mean, it's so frustrating because it's like you see them play well, but you can't get your hopes up because it's like what's going to happen next game? Are they going to be able to match what they just did? And they haven't been able to do that. Now listen to this, Facci. According to Pivot Fade, I did tweet this out for the worst lineup. It was the Pacers starting 5. Siakam, Mathurin, Haliburton, Jarris Walker, Enrique Freeman. They played 12 minutes and 33 seconds together. Minus 16 for the game, a minus 58.9 net rating. They had a 68 offensive rating, which is just incredibly awful, which I think that was really, really bad. Their defensive rating was 126.9, which is also terrible. But the fact that their offensive rating was so abysmal, they didn't get into any rhythm. The group that we probably thought should have started, or at least played more minutes together with, the starting 5 with Toppin and McConnell with Haliburton, Mathurin, Siakam, that was the Pacers' best lineup. They were a +9 in the game in 5 minutes and 44 seconds. They only played 5 minutes and 44 seconds together with that lineup. That to me was a massive mistake by Carlisle. I think he should have played them at least 25 minutes plus, knowing that those are the guys that have the chemistry together. But that team had an offensive rating of 176.9 and a defensive rating of 116.7, so a positive net rating of 60.2. It's like the complete opposite of what the starters were. So it's like matchup and lineup combinations, they matter. I understand why the coaching staff did what they did. We talked about it at the beginning, but I just go back to that because to me, it's like the reason why they love having Nembhard in the starting 5 is the secondary ball handler. You get that with McConnell out there next to Haliburton. Mathurin, played much better in that moment. Toppin is bigger than Enrique Freeman. I feel like with his 3-point shooting, he can pull Pirtle away from the basket. And if Pirtle doesn't want to come out and guard him, he can at least shoot the 3 wide open. Or if he does come out and guard him, he's quick enough that he can drive right by him and dunk. So I just feel like they missed a great opportunity here to play that lineup more. And I'm sorry if I'm hammering away the same point, but I just a little bit disappointed that they didn't realize like, these are probably our 5 best players in the game. Maybe we should play them more together. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't think this was the best coach game. I think that this is, Carlisle talked about 2 games ago against Miami saying, hey, this one was on him. He didn't get the players ready. This was just not great from a lineup standpoint. Like, I feel like, I don't know if this is more of like, I don't want to say rewarding guys. Like, hey, look, like Walker definitely deserved to start. Definitely. No doubt. Enrique Freeman felt like it was like, okay, hey, he would classify, we talked about it. There's the balance of the lineup between the bench and the starters. And hey, he can be more of like a rebounder type of player. He's 6'7". He's giving up size. I feel like Enrique Freeman should not be starting games, honestly, on any team. let alone the Pacers. I think that's a problem right there. This was a very, very winnable game. Against there's talent on the Toronto team, but I don't care who's out for the Pacers. Toronto had just as many injuries. And then tell me when you've heard this before. A guy goes off for a season high against the Pacers. It's like RJ Barrett's a good player, but it didn't surprise me that he had a season high 39 against the Pacers. And Jakob Poeltl just tore him apart, like we mentioned before. I just feel like this Pacers team is really struggling to find any sort of consistency. Only once this year have they won 2 games in a row. Only once. And every time we take a look at the schedule, I mean, even you and I talked offline. Every time you want to believe and go, hey, this is a winnable stretch, they're finding a way to underperform. And right now, through 14 games, when you look at the schedule, they have underperformed against bad teams just as much as they have last year. And if anything, now the crazy thing is that win against Detroit is actually looking like a good win because Detroit's actually, not that bad. But I feel like just overall so far, I mean, Indiana, it's almost strange that they beat Boston and Dallas and have a win over Orlando or the Knicks, whatever you want to call it, those wins, because some of these losses have already been so poor. I mean, losing to Philly without Embiid and Paul George, losing to a really hurt Pelicans team, losing to Charlotte by 20, losing to a really hurt Toronto team. I mean, think about this. You also lost to Orlando without Paul Banchero once. And then you lost to Miami without Jimmy Butler. It's like even the teams that we're losing to, like they're without arguably their best player each time and still beating the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers in their last 8 games, they've gone 4-4. And, when the Mavericks were at full strength, they beat them. The Celtics, only without Kristaps, they beat them. It's like kind of the same thing that happened last year. And I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, they're the same team.
No.
This to me is a team that has not got its footing right. And they're still trying to figure things out, Facci. And that's my biggest concern is just like, we haven't really seen them play great basketball for good stretches throughout the season. Number one. And number two, they just haven't been fully healthy. And that's everybody across the league. So it's not an excuse, but it's just this team relies on their depth. And that's just the bottom line. Without their depth, they are just not a very good team. And so that's why we've always talked about their strength in numbers. And it's like, I understand, like, my whole point tonight was like, let's just calm down on calling this team a terrible team. Like, this is an awful team. They're 2 games under 500 through 14 games. There's still 68 games left to be played. They've had Aaron Nesmith out for 8 games. Nembhard's missed 7. It's like those are 2 of your top 5-7 guys in this rotation. Shepherd missed his first game tonight, but obviously we've already talked about Jackson and Wiseman. They're out for the year. So it's like you've lost a lot of your key rotational players that would have impacted the game in positive ways. And like in this game against Toronto tonight, my biggest point was like, look, I get it. The Pacers aren't playing good. It's a disappointing night. You shouldn't be happy with the effort they played with. But also, like, yes, Toronto has people out too. I'm trying to make sure I am very understanding of the situation. But you're without your top 5 defenders on the roster.
That's exactly how I'd put it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like that's just the truth. They're just Miles Turner, whether you love him or not, he is a top 5 defender on this team. I'm not saying he's number 1, but Nesmith, Nembhard, Shepherd are your best perimeter defenders, and Isaiah Jackson and Miles Turner are your best interior defenders. Without those 5, your team is going to take a hit. Okay, that's just the bottom line. Obi Toppin is not a good defensive player. Tyrese Haliburton is not a good defensive player. Pascal Siakam so far has not been a good defensive player in his Pacers tenure. Benedict Mathurin has moments, right? And he's still getting better. TJ McConnell will try his butt off, but he's not necessarily the greatest defender, right? Because he's not the right size. He's so small. He can only do so much. And it's like Jarris Walker, you talked about his play tonight. Like, it's just, he has moments throughout a game, but he's just not someone you can rely on just yet. He's still so raw with his talent. So overall, I know we're rambling here a little bit about this game. It's a bad loss. You got to move on from it because you got a game against Houston, who's been playing much, much better this season on Wednesday night. Hopefully Moses Brown will be there for that game. That's kind of the speculation, according to Dustin Dopirak. They're thinking the signing will be official by Wednesday. He should be with the team. Not sure how much he's going to help. I mean, because it still starts with the head of the snake, Tyrese Haliburton, but you gotta figure this out. I mean, and I think that's why I still feel like confident about this team, just because we haven't seen this team together playing. We haven't seen them reach their peak yet. It's not like they've reached their peak and now they're falling. That's not how I feel. I feel like we have yet to really see this group consistently play together because of all the injuries. And I think it's really kind of stunted their ability to go on a run because they won like 3 out of 4 at one point. And then it felt like things were kind of clicking, and then all of a sudden they have a bad losing stretch there again. So I think they're going to figure it out. I still believe in this team. I still think that they're going to make the playoffs. I still think that this is a team that, they have a lot of potential, but I understand the frustrations. I'm not ready to write them off yet. And maybe I'm too positive, but if I am, it's whatever. But I'm trying not to always look at everything as negative as possible because I feel like too many people have so many negative outlooks on how this team is right now, and I think that they're not really putting everything into perspective.
Yeah, look, some of the comments for some of the episodes have gotten like ugly. It's like if we say anything positive about this team, all of a sudden it's like everyone makes it seem like we're ignoring all the negative. Like, no, look, it's a really bad loss. It's a bad loss. But like I think for those of you that are saying like, well, we got to make a trade. Glass half full approach. Let's just look at it as this roster is only going to get better and better due to how hurt it is right now. Like getting Turner back, hey, it's an instant boost. Getting Ben Shepherd back, all right, that's a boost. We get Nembhard and Neesmith back in what could be the same week. That's going to be huge. It's like help is on the way because this team is running at, you have about half the roster right now, maybe a third of the roster playing. And like you said before, we're missing our top 5 defenders. It's ugly, but the important thing is that you want to peak at the right time. You want to play your best basketball at the right time. And I'm sorry, like Cleveland, like what they're doing right now, it's great. But if Cleveland ain't doing this and when it matters most towards April, May, June, that time, then no one's gonna remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So you just gotta tread enough water, be able to doggy paddle, whatever you gotta do to keep swimming, to be able to get to when it matters most, and that is that playoff time, that stretch. You don't want to be a playing team, definitely not. But like, if we think things are bad now, like, what do you think it's probably like for the Bucks or the 76ers? Like, I think they're probably thinking there's enough talent on this roster that will figure things out. And I think for the Pacers, there is the talent here. There is the time. They're not 10 games below 500 or anything of the sort. The East is so down right now that if you can just be around 500, you can be more than fine at this moment, 14 games into the season. But yeah, this isn't opening week anymore. This is definitely time to get it together. And I think basically probably about a fifth of the season is probably already through. I mean, yeah, I'm not a mathematician, but it's pretty close to a fifth of the season. 20% has been played, and I think that we haven't liked the results, but we know that there's still a lot of season left to play. This team will get healthy eventually.
Yeah, 14 divided by 82 is 17%, Facci. So, about a fifth, a little bit over, a little bit less, but it's I understand what you're saying. Now let me just throw this out here real quick because I'm not saying the fan base is turning on Tyrese Haliburton. I don't want to say that. But there are a lot of people that are just very unhappy with his play.
Yes.
He's 24 years old. Okay? And I think that this rise last season was massive compared to how most players
just
it went from basically like, okay, this guy's fun, they're on a non-competitive team, like it's fun to watch him playing free, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh boom, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals out of nowhere. And this is why I think so many people compared this team to the Hawks, because I think the same thing kind of happened to Trae Young a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
So it's a fair comparison because Trae Young is not like Trae Young's a better scorer than Tyrese Haliburton. That's just his natural ability, and he's a good passer. Like I know people that legit will say that Trae Young is a better player still than Tyrese Haliburton individually. I disagree with that only because I think Haliburton's a better defender, and I think Haliburton's a better leader, and I think that matters, right? Because Tyrese has a lot of pressure on him being the face of the franchise at 24 years old. So that to me is how I feel, but you're giving me an ugly face over there. What are you looking at?
I had to pull up Trae Young stats. I was like, all right, let me just see it for myself. Trae Young's shooting below 39% from the field this year on a Hawks team that no one cares about. So it's like, yeah, is he more consistent from a scoring standpoint? Yes, but he's also a guy who will put up 18 to 20 shots a night, and I just feel like it's like Give me Tyrese Haliburton. All right, I think that Haliburton's definitely going through something right now. But if Trae Young's like your guy, like your number one, you're just not gonna be that good of a team. And I think everybody knows that Tyrese is not like a 1A. Like he needs someone else there to be that scorer. I think that's why Pacers have Siakam. That's why Mathurin is able to step up. So yeah, no, I stand by that. Give me Tyrese Haliburton all day. Just this is Haliburton. I feel like kind of at his lowest right now. Like the fan base, we see it. People start bringing up what he's getting paid. Yeah, expectations do change when you get a max contract. When you are coming off All NBA. When you do start an All Star game. When you do make Team USA. People do look at you differently and hold you to a higher standard. And right now, he has not been able to deliver on that standard. That is non-debatable.
You're right. I mean, it's a great point. I'm not going to get into the Trae Young, Tyrese Haliburton
That's a
like
whole
massive
nother
debate right now. It's a totally different podcast for that. But I will say, I bet there are fans that probably wish Tyrese would be more aggressive, looking for a shot. And I think my biggest complaint with Tyrese is the amount of times he settles for threes. But that's been something we've talked about a lot on this
Yes.
podcast. So it's not like
Surprised me
I'm saying
less.
anything new, but like I go back to that game against the Heat on Sunday night. They won the game, but he had a clean drive to the basket. And he passed it out to Ben Shepherd for a three in front of the bench in the first half. Ben Shepherd missed a three. Pacers don't get the rebound. Miami gets the rebound. Pacers get a steal on the next possession. Haliburton throws it out to Obi Toppin for an alley-oop, and they kind of make it up. They make up for it, but still, that was 2 points Haliburton gave away that were wide open for a three, which was unnecessary to me. So I think that's interesting. But to close things out here, just the last thing I want to say, because Mark Monteith, we really respect Mark Monteith and his coverage of the Pacers from, decades ago to now. But he said the Pacers have won 2 consecutive games just once this season, Facci, and they generally follow victories with one-sided losses. The average margin of defeat following wins is a 13.4 loss. They're losing by an average of 13.4 points after a win. So I'm sure some of those games are skewed when you look at the 25-point loss to New York, 20-point loss to Charlotte, but still, it's telling of who this team is right now. They're just not a great team. They're not a team that made to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They're not playing at that level. I think it's Matt Beckham has been constantly in my mentions, probably in your mentions as well, saying this is a 500 basketball team. And I can't disagree. I mean, at this point, we talked about it like after like the first week. This feels like a team that'll probably end up finishing closer to 500 than we expected.
Yep.
The 50-plus wins, I don't see it this year. They're too inconsistent. They've been playing too flat. And Tyrese Haliburton hasn't been great, but they just got to go on a stretch here. I mean, they just got to find a way. They got a big home stretch coming up here after this road trip. And I'm hoping that's in the next 10 games they can figure things out. But I'm not holding my breath. I think this team is just, they're trying to survive right now. They're treading water, but I'm not overly concerned as how I would feel right now. Ask me in about a month, and I'll tell you if I feel differently.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's like you looked at a night like tonight. It's like, Johnny Furphy is someone that we thought coming into the year might not see the court at all. Like, just, hey, you know what? Just develop in the G League. All right, Enrique Freeman, definitely the same thing. We felt like, Johnny Furphy would have, more of a way higher ceiling and anything like that. Actual, like, full-on guaranteed roster spot than compared to, like, Enrique Freeman. Now we're looking at, like, Freeman's playing, basically 20 minutes. Johnny Furphy's been having a role some of the last few games. Quentin Jackson has like kind of earned a spot the last few games. I feel like this is just all things that you did not expect because we came into the season saying, yeah, probably have to do a consolidation trade. There's just too much talent on this roster. And you look at it and it's like, hey, injuries, they do happen. They've affected the Pacers. A couple of them have been season ending. But if you just want to one last time look glass half full, the real core of this Pacers team is still intact for the long season. I think right now they're getting through some injuries. I think it's important that they're not rushing back. Nesmith and Nembhard, I think that we'll thank ourselves for that later on in the year, but it's important to not hit the panic button and bring these guys back before they're ready to come back because if those injuries do linger, then yeah, Indiana will be in trouble.
And I will say positively, right? Like Pascal's been pretty good all season long.
Yep.
I think Mathurin's really using this opportunity to kind of elevate his game to another level. So once you get fully healthy, that's why I still feel pretty good about it. But I go back to just Quentin Jackson. I love the energy that he plays with. And I feel like if just Tyrese, Pascal, Ben, those kind of guys would be more like energetic, like Quentin Jackson, because he's got to get that dog in him, right? You know what I mean? Like, no,
Yeah.
like he don't fear anything, and he's a little bit loose sometimes with the ball. Like, there's a reason why he's a two-way guy. But when he comes in there, he just impacts his game with hustle. And I feel like that extra added energy, like there's guys in the league that are like that because that's what makes them, stick around a little bit longer because they don't maybe have the same skill set, finesse, whatever as other players. But like if you could just get like Haliburton to play with like 25% of the dog that Quentin Jackson plays with, like he would look like a totally different player. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I just fans see like, man, Quentin Jackson's out there like working his butt off. Yet Tyrese Haliburton's out here to like moving east and west and not moving north and south. And then, oh crap, shot clock's expiring. Oh, I got to throw up a bad three. I'm not getting any flow with my offense. And then, back on defense, I'm guarding the worst player and hoping I don't get burned. So it's like, I get it. I get it. I get the frustrations. I do. But it's just like, it just comes to the territory. Like you don't see a lot of stars like Luca. Those kind of guys don't play with that dog mentality, right? But I do think that when you're not playing well, you need to find that inner dog within you. And we've seen Tyrese Haliburton play like a dog at times, right? When he's going well, but it can't just be when you're playing well and feeling yourself halfway through the game. You got to start out that way sometimes. And if he could channel that inner Quentin Jackson a little bit, if he has any of it, I think that would help him.
I think it would. And you know what? Maybe we've talked about this before, but maybe he needs his Mark Jackson, someone to just be hyping him up and to really like get him going at times. I think I think Tyrese really focuses on getting other players, involved early on. Maybe he's got to just really focus on getting himself going really early on. I think that could help. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just think that right now, like for anyone who's thinking, oh, you guys are backing up this team too much, guys, this is a painful one to watch. It really was. I mean, when the Pacers went up 41-40, that was it. That was like the moment. It vanished. The Pacers ended up being outscoring by like they got outscored by like 20 points after that. So it's just things were tough. The highlights have been a little bit few and far between, and the consistency has not been there all year. But I think that there's a good favorable stretch coming up. I don't know what the extent of Miles Turner's injury is going to be. I don't know what the extent of Ben Shepherd's going to be. We do know that Neesmith and Nemhard, all signs pointed to probably missing the rest of this month. So that's about 2 weeks. So we just gotta weather the storm. I think that that's really the big thing is that guys, it's probably gonna get uglier before it gets real pretty. So be prepared that this team could still continue to suffer a little bit. It was 3 games, 4 nights. They just looked gassed tonight. They simply did, and I think that you got a road trip coming up. This is going to be Toronto was the first of 3 straight games on the road. It's going to be tough. Houston's a team that still has aspirations, for the long run, and then Milwaukee, they've been struggling. They're going to be fighting like dear life, and that game's going to be it's going to mean a little something extra.
Oh
It's going
yeah.
to have a little bit of extra motivation in there. So Indiana better be ready for a physical one.
All right, let's quickly give out our awards for tonight's game. Do we have an MVP of the game? Mel Daniels MVP?
It's honestly tough. If you wanted to go with a leading scorer, you could say Mathurin, who had 17 of his 28 in the game, but it was
It's
honestly
not
TJ
Mathurin. I
McConnell.
think it's got to be Toppin or McConnell, in my
I think
opinion.
it's got to be TJ McConnell in my mind. I think he, a plus minus of plus 23. I just feel like he was the player that really made a big impact in this game, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right player for the MVP of this game because he was the reason that they were even in it at the end there. Now, in terms of our Reggie Miller clutch player of the game, I think Mathurin could be the candidate for
Yeah.
that because he did have 17 fourth quarter points.
Yeah, I think it's fair to give it Mathurin. If you weren't going to give it to Mathurin, it would be Obi Toppin, who also had a good run of like he scored like I think like 7 of the first 9 in the fourth quarter. But I think you give it to Mathurin because the 17 points in the fourth quarter. He had a stretch where he really put the Pacers on his back for like 6 straight points and was cutting it down to 7 or 9 in the game.
Yeah. 92.4% from true shooting percentage from Mathurin in the fourth quarter. I mean, just
Wow.
insane numbers right there. Like 6 of 7 from the field, 3 of 5 from the free throw line. Wish he would have made both those free throws, but I feel like he deserves that at least because of how good he was in the fourth quarter. Now, for our hustle player of the game, our feisty Foster hustle player of the game, who are we going with?
I think TJ McConnell is also deserving of that. I think for McConnell, I mean, 5 steals. I felt like you felt the impact. Like I mentioned earlier, and I'd be more than fine giving McConnell his second award of the night. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, we could, if you want, you can give McConnell the feisty Foster hustle player of the game, and give Toppin MVP if you want
Yeah,
to spread the
I'm fine with
love?
I'll spread the love. There's enough love to go around.
Okay. I'm not going to push back too much on that. I didn't know if we wanted to give it to Quentin Jackson again, but I think that'd be like his third.
He'd be racking up some awards over
He's
there.
getting too many Feisty Foster Hustle Player awards for these games, but he's been deserving. Like he's been in the conversation, which is,
yeah,
that's problematic. That to me is problematic.
That's a good way to look at it because if Quentin Jackson, if you're counting on him to bring the hustle and the feistiness, then it's like, okay, how many guys are out tonight? Because it feels like he shouldn't have a pathway of playing time as consistent as he has, and he's starting to consistently, man, he's played in 5 games. He's played in 5 games this month, and he's played double-digit minutes in 4 of them. So.
Yeah.
2 of those games he's played 19 plus minutes in, and I think that's probably more than anybody expected, especially this early.
Absolutely, Facci. Well, we are going to wrap things up here. So Wednesday night, me and Facci will be back to recap the Rockets game. But before that, we're going to be doing a mailbag podcast. We got about 7-8 questions we're going to answer for that one for our Wednesday show. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Probably out a little bit like later Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. So you guys will enjoy that mailbag. But with that being said, Facci, I know that it's not been fun talking about losses here recently, but if you're hoping the Pacers can get back to their winning ways, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!